Alright, welcome everyone. So today we're going to go over how to download the code for your Keychain device and also on how to get your system set up in order to be able to build the code, and then also we'll go over how to program the Keychain and add any custom images or GIFs that you'd like to put on your Keychain. So I will have the times listed throughout this video for the different segments. Initially we set up Windows, and then we go on the Mac OS side and how to get everything set up. So if you want to go ahead and skip forward, at the end of the video we'll also show the programming of the Keychain code. Alright, so on the Windows side here, we are currently at the Keychain repository, and we can go ahead and copy the code here. So if you have Git installed on your machine, you can copy this URL here and then open up PowerShell, and we can just do git clone the link. This will save everything in this repository onto our local machine here. If you don't have Git installed, that's okay. You still can download the code. Just click to download the source as a zip, and then you'll have that in your downloads folder as a folder containing the repository here. So we're going to follow the README as our tutorial here on getting the environment set up so we can program the Keychain. So we need to use VS Code. If you don't have it, go ahead and download it using this Windows link here. That'll give you the application. You can install that from your downloads folder. I already have it installed on my machine, so we'll get that open here. Once you have VS Code installed, you'll go up here to the File, Open Folder, and now we're going to open that repository that we just downloaded. So now we can see the repository has been loaded in. Say if we want to see the main code, we go to Source, click main.c, and this is our main code. Go all the way to the bottom. Here's our main function with our while loop. So going back to the tutorial here, the next thing that we need is going to be the ARM GCC toolchain, which includes the compiler. So for that, we're going to click the Windows link here. This should start an automatic download process for this, which we can see here. Alright, and that just completed downloading, and it took about a minute and a half, so it can vary in terms of the download speeds. So we'll want to open that exe that we just downloaded, and we're just going to continue through this installer. This is going to install this software onto the machine here, which again might take a few minutes. And then we will want to check this to add path to environment variable. So make sure that all of these are checked. And click Finish. We don't need that. And we can close this as well. So the last thing that we need is to install Make, and this allows us to easily build the binary file for the Keychain in just one simple command. So on Windows, we're going to run this command here in a PowerShell. So we're going to open PowerShell just like we did to clone the repository using Git. We can paste that in, and then we want to say yes. make has been successfully installed, so again we can close that. So now that make has been successfully installed, we want to make sure that both the ARM-GCC toolchain and make have been successfully installed to the system, that we can use them. And we can do this by testing inside of VS Code by running make in a terminal. Before we do that, we want to make sure that we close VS Code completely and reopen it after installing those two tools. So now that we have it reopened, we can go here to Terminal, New Terminal, and then all we need to do is run make. So this does look like it is compiling, which is great. And also, when we run make, we want to make sure that we are inside of our keychain directory here, and we run make directly inside of this directory, not into any of the subdirectories. And this may take a few minutes the first time it goes. Looks like it just completed there, and we don't see any errors. And going back to the tutorial here, we know it's complete if we see something like this at the bottom, which we do see. So we can go back here. We scroll all the way to the bottom. We do see our flash and RAM usage, and we see that a binary file has been created. And this is also important to see if you are wanting to change the pictures or GIFs that are on the keychain. We always want to make sure this is less than 100%, because if our flash usage is higher than 100%, then the controller can't fit that program on it. So always make sure to check this after compilation that it's below 100%. Right, so on the macOS side here, we can see that we are at the keychain repository, and then we will go ahead and clone the repository using Git, which most Macs will already have installed. So to open up a terminal, type in git clone and then the link that we copied from the repository there. And if your machine doesn't have Git, or if you just want to download a zip file of the repository, you can do so clicking code and then click zip there. That'll download a zip archive that you can open, which will have the directory of the repository there for you. So now we need to download VS Code. If you don't already have it, you can click that link there that says macOS VS Code. That'll start a download of that application. That's going to be the environment that we use to program the keychain. So check downloads, double click to open. And then we have VS Code here. So now we can open the repository. So click on File and then Open Folder. And we want to go and find the UNL ECE keychain directory that we had just downloaded from GitLab. And you can trust it. And then here we can open up the main code in the source and then click main. And then if we scroll down, we will see our main function with our infinite while loop. So the next thing that we need is to install the ARM-GCC embedded toolchain, which includes the compiler for this device. So click the macOS ARM-GCC compiler link there. That will also create a download. This can take a couple minutes, but once it's finished downloading, click it there and work through the installer just by clicking next and install. This may take a few minutes as well. And then move to trash when it's done. And then we need to run one more command for this as well. We need to add that application to our path. So copy and paste that command there, run it in terminal, and you'll have to do this once. So then the last dependency we need is make, and go ahead and copy that there, paste that into terminal, run that. There's a chance that your machine already has it installed. If not, go ahead and just run through the setup for that to have those command line tools installed. So now next, make sure that when we go back to VS Code that you have fully quit the application before trying to build anything. That way VS Code knows that we have those dependencies installed. So on the dock where VS Code is, right click and hit quit. Make sure the application is totally not running before we open it again. So once you have that, open it, and it should return to our UNL ECE Keychain directory. And here we can test to make sure that all of our dependencies are there. So we're gonna try and build the code. And to do so, just type make. And if we see output like this, that means we're all good to go and the code is building. The first build process can take a little bit longer than subsequent. And there we go. So if we see something like this at the bottom, that means it was successfully built. We can see that there is a binary file, a .bin, that we need, and it's important to look here at the flash size when going forward. That percentage we always want to be under 100. If it's over 100, that means the file is too large for the microcontroller to fully fit. Alright, so at this point, now that we have the environment set up, we are all ready to go to start programming the keychain. So in order to do so, there is a companion app that is already here downloaded within the repository. So inside of this directory, UNL Keychain Utility App, you're going to see an exe and then a .app file. So the exe is going to be for Windows, .app is for Mac OS. So in terms of Mac OS, the first time you open this, you may get a pop-up, and what you'll need to do is go into System Settings here, scroll down to Privacy and Security, all the way down here, and then after you've tried launching it the first time, it will come up here with a an acknowledge or a trust button. So you want to click that, and then, or it might say open. So click that, and then try opening the app again, and then you should be good to go. It might take a second for it to open here. You'll see it pop up on the dock, and then just give it a few more seconds, and it will open after that. And then similar process on Windows. So if you're on Windows, double click the exe. Most likely it will come up with another pop-up as well. Click more info on the bottom left in Windows, and then you can click run from there. So once we're inside of this utility, this first page here allows us to connect to our keychain and to flash the binary file that we compile using VS Code. And then in these two sections here, we can actually create the code for our images or our GIFs. So I'll show you an example for each of these here, and then how to add it to our VS Code project here as well. So say if we want to put a custom image on the keychain, so we can click upload image here. If you have one already, which I do here, just an example like a Husker N. And we have two options to retain the aspect ratio so it doesn't get stretched. You can choose to do that whatever you're liking. and we can generate a bitmap by clicking this button here, and this gives us the code of this image that we can place in VS Code, which then gets put on the keychain. For some images, you might want to try the mono mode. That helps a bit more in terms of having higher contrast, especially for logos. So I think in this case I'll keep the mono mode. And for different images, you can try adjusting brightness. That might also help to make it look a bit better. So once we have this generated, we can copy the code here to our clipboard, and then we can go over to our VS Code project. We want to go to the include folder and then go to frames. And then we'll scroll all the way down in this frames folder or file, and then create a couple new lines and then just paste what we have there. So this is an array that has our 1024 bytes, all of the pixel data for this image, and we can reference it by this name, custom image. So I'll copy that, and then make sure you save the file. So on Mac OS, it's just Command S. That way, we can reference this in code, and when it's saved, that little dot will go away. So we can go back here to main, and then down here, this gives you examples on how to place images. So in our main function, we have an init function that's called when the device turns on. This only happens once, and that function's here, so that just initializes all of our hardware, and then we go into this while loop. This is infinite, so what this does, this will print the default information that you already see on your keychain right now. If you're editing the code, you want to comment this out, so just add 2 forward slashes in front of that, and it should turn green. Now we can place our custom image and custom GIFs, so that way we have more memory to work with when we comment out that initial default info there. So to place our custom image, we can call put image, and then we can paste our image name there, and then add a comma, and then we need to add a delay time. So this value here is in milliseconds. So say if we want this image, our custom image, to show up for 5 seconds on the keychain, we want to add 5,000 milliseconds. We can save, and then let's add a GIF here as well. So going back to the keychain utility, we can go to the GIF playground, and here is a link to giphy.com that has a whole bunch of different GIFs you can take a look at and save super easily just by clicking on it and then dragging it to your desktop. I already have one here downloaded. Actually, no, in this case, I have one pulled up here. So let's say I want to go with this little red one. Just click on it and then drag and drop to your desktop, and then we can upload here. There it is. So this gives us a preview before generating the code for this. And then also we have our aspect ratio. If you want to retain that, similar to the image, you can check this on or off. And then this shows the amount of frames that will be output. So it's default set to half, and that is so there is not too much memory being taken up inside of the microcontroller, so you can add more GIFs and more photos, because it can only really hold around 50 to 55 total frames. So in this case we only have 19, which should work fine. So we can generate, and that gives us a preview, and then very similar to the image that we had generated earlier, this has all of our code here for each frame. So we will click this copy button here and then move back over to VS Code. So we're going to go back to this frames file, and then get on a new line down here, and then just paste all of that code into our file here. And it will be named, the reference that we need is down here in this array, which is just called GIF, and has 19 total frames. So we'll save, go back to our main code, and then we can use the put GIF function and then reference our GIF here, and then the put GIF function has a bit more arguments than the put image. So the first is our GIF reference that we have there, and then how many different times you want the GIF to repeat. So that can be, in my case, let's just say 4. We want it to loop 4 different times. And then we have the amount of frames, which was 19, and if you need, you can see that right here, that value, 19, comma. And then if we want it to go in reverse, which in this case we don't, so just put 0. If you do, put 1. And then our delay time. This one is important. It's a bit different than the image one. We go back here, we need this value. So 70 milliseconds is the average frame duration for this GIF. So here, for that, we put 70. And then semicolon. And then we can save. So now what this does is our Nebraska N custom image will show for 5 seconds on the keychain, and then the little red GIF that we just generated here will show 4 times back to back, and then the device we put to sleep, and then when there's motion detected, it'll wake up, and this loop will continue, and then go back to sleep, and then do the same thing when it's woken up again. So once you have all your images that you'd like in code here, we can compile this. So just run make, and then this is good. We have a binary file that was generated. Just scroll up to make sure there's no explicit failures. This is just a warning, so that should be okay. And it looks like we're using almost half of the storage on the device. So now, once we're ready to program, or to flash the code onto the keychain, we can go back here to this main keychain programmer pane. We can select the firmware file. So here we have to go to our repository, which is in my home folder, and then we can go to build, and then we want to select this .bin file, which is our code compiled. And then once we have that, just take a USB-C cable that's plugged into your machine, plug it in here to your keychain. Once you have it plugged in, all we need to do is click flash, and this might take a couple seconds depending on the size of your firmware file, but it shouldn't take very long. And we can see it's verifying, and then once it's written, it'll say success, and we can see that our image and our GIF now shows up on the keychain. And with this device, when you have it plugged in for about an hour and a half or 2 hours, you should get around 2 weeks of battery life, depending on how much it's being used, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more. So if the device just stops working, or you don't see the display turning on, just give it some power plugged into your computer or to a phone charger or anything that has USB. Give it around 2 hours to charge, and you should be good to go for around two more weeks.